I'm not sure that I believe in having to jump outside of your comfort zone because I believe you can expand it and you can move it. And if your comfort zone is right here and this thing you want is right here, you don't have to necessarily like leap outside, just like Pac-Man it. Well, just expand your comfort zone, stretch it at all the different angles, develop new skills little by little until eventually you're looking at your comfort zone and it's 5 times the size that it was before. Okay, so today I want to talk about the way that I have found really effective for dealing with anxiety in business, especially when huge, exciting things are happening. Let me just turn this light down a little bit. You hear all the time advice like you've got to jump outside of your comfort zone, and like there's that. If you watch Girls, you remember in the first episode, there was this whole, or in the first season, there was this whole conversation about a picture on the wall somewhere where it was a circle that was your comfort zone. And then like your dreams are outside it. And that has been a really, really popular way of looking at success and reaching goals. And I am going to call BS on it a little bit, at least if you're struggling with mental health, anxiety, stuff like that. Because I speak from experience, those two things are not always compatible. There have been times when I did finally tamp my anxiety down and take a big risk, leap outside of my comfort zone. And what ended up happening was so many panic attacks and anxiety attacks that things didn't work out. And so I think that anxiety can really sabotage you when you're trying to take big leaps outside of your comfort zone. However, that does not mean that we are stuck doing the same thing for the rest of our lives. I am a big believer in not overcoming anxiety or mental illness, but learning how to work with it and turn it into a superpower instead. And so if my anxiety is preventing me from taking this certain route to a goal, like public speaking at a big conference, if it was not letting me take a big risk and jump outside of my comfort zone to do that, no problem. I will just find a different route. And for me, one way that my anxiety always manifests is in over planning. And so one way that I have been able to turn that into a superpower is by setting very intricate kind of plans to break things down. So a great example of this is how I approached public speaking. I just got back from speaking at Inbound, a marketing conference a few weeks ago. And it was big for me. It was first time even going to a conference since all of my health issues, and I realized that conferences are not a great idea for me. So it was a big risk in a lot of ways. I keep getting people saying, you know, especially given your anxiety, it's great that you took a huge risk like this, or it's so great that you jumped outside of that you went outside of your comfort zone. And honestly, that's not how it felt. The reason that those comments felt so off for me is because I was not taking a huge leap outside of my comfort zone. I actually take a completely different approach to taking risks in business. I haven't talked about this a lot, but this past year was not the first time that I applied to speak at Inbound. I've applied twice before, first in 2016. And when I applied that first time, it was a really big leap outside of my comfort zone. 45-minute presentation in person was nothing like anything I'd ever done professionally before. And so when I decided that speaking was something I wanted to do long term, I broke that goal down. And I basically, instead of taking this big leap, I planned a bunch of tiny hops. So from 2016, I started teaching more webinars on my own. in 2017, I started doing Facebook Lives and launched a YouTube channel. And so I had just kind of taken all these tiny steps from 2016 to now that has made being able to take this risk as someone with severe anxiety that normally people would think would hold me back from a lot, it just tricked it. And so it really wasn't that 2016 I did not jump out of my comfort zone, and 2018 I did. But by the time Inbound came around this year, it wasn't as big of a leap. That's all it was. It just wasn't as big of a leap anymore. It was a natural next step. My anxiety wasn't trying to trick me or sabotage me every step of the way. I really knew how to deal with things better by that point. I like to think of anxiety as mental illness as just quirks that we learn to work with despite them trying to play tricks on us. And one great way to do that is to play tricks right back. And taking all these tiny steps so that your mind and your mental health does not even notice how far you're moving and what big things you are doing is so great. If you have anxiety, you may not be a leaper. You may not be one to take huge leaps and go way outside of your comfort zone in one fell swoop. But that doesn't mean you can't do the cool things. It just means you have to take tiny hops. And it's great because from the outside, we still end up in the same place. I still spoke at this great conference in front of like 300 people on the same day as Shonda Rhimes. But instead of feeling on the inside like this huge risk most of the time, it felt like a really natural next step. And that's because I don't try to jump outside of my comfort zone. And if you have anxiety, I suggest that you really carefully approach this too. Just decide you want something and break it down into tinier steps until you get it.